Is Earth a hell realm? Sometimes it feels like it, especially lately. Let's see what this guy has to say about it.
In order to establish and maintain a practice, you're going to have to develop an understanding of the truth, because that understanding will motivate you to do the practice. Otherwise, the voice in your head will talk you out of doing it. You won't feel like doing it. You won't think to do it. Most of humanity only can do what it likes doing, what it thinks to do is correct, and what it feels like doing. Other than that, you can't do it, right? So that's why people can't act in their own best interest, because if it's too difficult, if it appears to be difficult, if it requires more than you're willing to put into it, if your thoughts are different about it than the way it is, or if you just don't feel like it, you won't do it. And so in meditation,
That's pretty deep right there. Most of humanity kind of is operating from sounds like he thinks most of humanity is operating from like a lower state of getting things done, turning thoughts into things reality. And I definitely agree with that. Sometimes I have that myself.
you won't establish a meditation practice unless you develop an understanding that allows you to appreciate the fact that if you don't do this, you're going to pay a very high price. There is a consequence to living a life that is in the dark. There is a consequence to living a life that is given to you by your conditioning, the conditioning that's been passed down from generation to generation. And the success of that conditioning, the success of the understanding that humanity has, can be easily recognized by watching the news or by looking at the reality of your own life.
Let me share my experience about that, because that hit me right there. I practice transcendental meditation, and sometimes I will go a long time without actually doing the practice. Let me rephrase that. When I'm on my game, I practice transcendental meditation, TM. It literally changed my life, because what I noticed, the reason I learned TM, and I think it was a blessing that I found it and that I was led to it, is because I noticed I was repeating patterns of behavior, even though consciously I didn't want to repeat those. There was some deep down impetus or spark that kept making me, for lack of a better word, repeat these patterns of behavior. I would get emotionally triggered in certain situations where I felt controlled or powerless, and I would do things that weren't in my best interest, that looking back, I'm like, ugh, embarrassing things, right? Power play type things, trying to get out of situations. And finally, after the third time of doing that, right, this could affect relationships, and I'm sure that it did. And I love people. I'm generally like very good spirits, very happy, very, relationship oriented. I love people, all those things, but there was deep down, I could sense that there was deep down emotional trauma or emotional something that would get triggered in these certain situations. And I finally learned TM, and it changed my life. But what I wanted to tell you is there was a period of time when I wasn't doing the practice much. I wasn't doing the practice as much as I should have been. And I had a situation with a very close friend of mine, and we had a huge blow up. And it was that same situation, similar, same-ish and similar, but I got triggered and I had a huge blow up and we had a huge fight. It was very, very unpleasant. And I always think about that now when I think about, doing my meditation, and still I can always do better, right? TM recommends twice a day. I feel you're beneficial if you even get one meditation in a day at the beginning of the day, because it sets the tone for all day. And here's what meditation gave me. It gave me a gap between something someone did to me or just did. And I don't, if we think about the four agreements, right? Nothing anyone does to you is ever about you. It's always about them. It gave me a gap. Meditation gives me a gap that allows me to make a conscious decision of whether I want to react in the way I've always reacted and let that trauma wound drive me, or whether I want to go, I'll let this go. I'm gonna take a better road here, take a better approach, a more conscious, aware approach. That's what it gave me. And I do agree with what he's saying here. Let's continue.
Because if your life is a typical life, you're struggling to make your relationships work, you're afraid of death, you're afraid of not having enough money, you're struggling to get along with your own body, you wake up in the morning in a condition of dread. And this is the typical life that human beings are experiencing, and the reason that that's the case is because you were born into a world that was already going, and the way the world was going could be accurately described as a hell realm. You were born in hell. People think that hell is where you go when you die. Well, they say that heaven on earth, the teachings say that heaven and hell both exist together on earth. Whether you're experiencing one or the other depends on your consciousness. Depends on how awake you are. If you're asleep and if your conditioning is running the show, then your life is a suffering life. Your life is a struggling life. Your life is a coping life. Your life is a difficult life, and then you die. If you understand what the truth is, motivation to practice meditation is natural because you want to be awake. You want to experience the heaven on earth, not the hell on earth. And in order to do that, you have to wake up and you have to come out of the dream. You have to come out of the thought process, and you have to come out of the conditioning that you inherited when you were born in this world and start to see things as they actually are. And the truth is, the way things actually are is that, and don't worry about whether what I'm about to say is something that makes sense.
That is so powerful there. My gosh. Jeez. That's a keeper right there. I think I'll share that as a short.
To you, or you believe or you don't believe. If you don't believe it, don't worry about it. Nonetheless, it is the truth. The truth is that you and I are not separate from one another. We're not different from one another. We're exactly the same. The awareness that you are and I am is literally exactly the same. Therefore, I can say, I am you and you are me, and that would be correct. And that's why you hear things like, treat your neighbor as you would have them treat yourself, because they are you. That's the truth. So that's one of the truths. The other truth is you're not who you think you are, right? We have learned to be who we think we are, and who we think we are is a physical body and a personality that has a name and has a story and all the rest of it, and that's who we get up in the morning and be all day, is the personality with the body. And we're living using our conditioning to try and make life work. It's very important for you to stop and take inventory and realize that up until now, as much as you have tried to use the conditioning, to use the education, as much as you have tried to cope with life, struggle with life, change life, improve life, it hasn't worked out very well. And the reason that that's the case, and the reason there's still a lot of suffering going on, is because you're still living in a conditioned state that is unrealistic and is not consistent with the way things actually are. Meditation is a practice that gradually will allow you to wake up and see the truth, see that your life is a brief visit. If you were living your life every day with the clear understanding that your life is a brief visit. My Zen teacher wrote a book about life from the viewpoint of the truth, and the book is called A Temporary Affair. So the truth is that you and I are not going to be here long at all. And if we were living our life with that understanding from moment to moment, we would take things differently. For example, you would understand you don't have time to get your shit together. You don't have time. 70 years is nothing to understand the truth. There's nothing to live a life that's worth living. And so, like Plato or Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living. So one of the things that's useful if you're going to practice meditation is to take and do an evaluation of your life. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you peaceful? Is your life working? Are your relationships working? What's your relationship to your physical body? Are you a detriment to yourself, or can you act in your own best interest? Most people can't. Most people can't even eat the right foods to stay healthy. Most people can't do the exercise to keep their body in shape.
Wow.
And then they torture their body with stress, right? No wonder.
That is super powerful right there, you know, and I've been there. And I'm there to varying degrees now, but I do see this. I think this is why we have an obesity problem. I think this is why we have a mental health problem in America. Like, could you imagine if everyone in America meditated? Holy crap. This is a great video. Let's continue.
People are dying sooner, and there are more and more diseases to kill us, you know. You know, we perpetuate cancer. You know, we perpetuate it. Studies are now showing that there's a high correlation between cancer and depression. There's a high correlation between cancer and the foods that people eat that ends up causing the disease. So there's a lot of good reasons to practice meditation, to wake up, to experience coming alive, to start to see things as they really are, so you can start to live a life that's functional and workable. So you can start taking care of your bodies, you can start relating to other human beings realistically, instead of considering them to be in your way, considering them to be a threat to you. So the talks are very important, and to come to a class consistently where you have somebody that can present these truths to you and help to keep you motivated, help to keep you on the path so that you're practicing the meditation correctly, so that you can get the results that makes possible. It's very important. So since I've started to record the talks, I have a YouTube channel now that has all the talks that I've done for the last several years. There's almost 500 talks there now. So if you're interested in visiting the YouTube channel and listening to the talks, the one that a class from Sunday, for example, if you were here on Sunday, that's up on YouTube now. So if you're interested in that, you can get my card after class and you can look me up on YouTube. I also wrote 2 books since I've been teaching the class. The first book I wrote was called Enlightenment Made Easy. I thought that might get some attention because everybody wants to be enlightened, but they don't want to have it be too hard, right? So it's called Enlightenment Made Easy. The second book was called Dying to Live. And they're both on Amazon, right?
Reminds me of that book. I forget who wrote it, but it's called The Lazy Man's Way to Enlightenment. Catchy title.
And the reason I called the second book Dying to Live is because what you'll discover through the practice of meditation is that in order to live, you have to die. In order to live, you have to die. What does that mean? It means that you have to let what's not alive be dead. The personality that you consider yourself to be is nothing other than a thought activity. It doesn't exist anywhere. There is no such thing as a you or a me personality. We believe there is, right? We maintain ourselves as if there is on Facebook. We believe there is, you know, we believe our story. We believe that we are a personality, right? We're trying to improve that personality. We're trying to impress with that personality. We're trying to live with that personality and go to sleep at night. The reality of it is, the personality is not real. In the ancient teachings, they call this the teachings of no self. It's considered to be the most important teaching there is, the teaching of no self. To discover that the personality is nothing but a thought activity. If I ask you who you are, you have no alternative but to tell me what you think. Isn't that true? That's the only way you can answer the question, is to tell me what you think. Therefore, you are who you think you are.
Wow.
The problem with that is, other than thinking that, it doesn't exist. It simply doesn't exist. This is a very important discovery to make, right? And if you discover that the personality that you've been trying to be all your life is actually not in existence, actually not real, it only exists in a thought activity, if you discover that to be the case, right? Then that personality dies. Because you thought it was real and you were trying to live your life as that, and then you discover it's not actually real, and so what you thought was real isn't real anymore. That means it's dead, it dies, and then when it dies, the real you shows up. the real you shows up. The real you is the awareness that's been on the back burner. The real you is the awareness that's been in the background all along, but you, like most of humanity, has been busy thinking about life and being a personality, using your conditioning, trying to interact with what you consider to be the world, trying to interact with who you consider to be other people, and suffering. And suffering. And it's going to continue to be suffering, because you can't have something work when the reality of it is not real. You can't have your personality succeed in being in the world when it doesn't actually exist. Right? So you begin through meditation.
Wow, that is so good. That is so good. The reason I stopped it, I want to share this with you. When he said, you are who you think you are, that's the core practice of One Life, which is the system that I created to help you know yourself and know your mission and your purpose in life, because you don't want to die with your mission unfulfilled. Or let's restate it, you don't want to die not having taken at least one step on your mission. I sometimes talk about, I share my story a little bit. Before I started my YouTube channel and upload my first video, but really, that was 2013, but really before I started Enhancing the Human Experience podcast, I studied YouTubers and like got all my ducks in a row for like 5 years. I was so afraid to speak up, right? It's a long time hurdle for me to speak my truth. I mean, even as definitely as a child, like speaking my mind and expressing myself for some reason has been a lifelong hurdle. Not so much anymore, because I do the practice every day, right? I do like the thing that you're afraid to do, and the thing that scares you, and the thing that excites you. The triad there is what you probably should do, right? And only you know what that is, right? Only you know what that is. Why there are so many hurdles on that, I don't know. But for me, it was speaking my mind, because I have a lot to say, as you can see. I got a lot to say about a lot of things, and I wanted to start a YouTube channel for so long, but I studied all these YouTubers. I made notes. I'm like, how do you do it? How do you get the confidence? What do you talk about? What do you do? All this stuff. My point is, the very first podcast that I uploaded, I did essentially 149 episodes of Enhancing the Human Experience. But the very first podcast that I uploaded, I already felt that I slayed my dragon, and I felt that if I died then, I would have lived a successful life. Because some people might look at that and go, dude, you only uploaded one podcast. But I felt so good that I slayed that demon, right? Slayed that dragon. Joseph Campbell talks about it in The Hero's Journey. It's also what Stephen Pressfield talked about, the war of art. That's the resistance in us, the doubt, the fear. Napoleon Hill talked about it in Outwitting the Devil. We face an enormous amount of resistance in the world when we do our work, when we do the thing that we're meant to do. Again, that's what the core practice of One Life is what is your mission? And I've got a section in there with like 41 ways for you to identify your mission, so that you can start on that journey, right? Because the world needs all of us to do our mission in the world, right? The power structure of the world wants to distract us and discourage us and derail us from doing our work in the world, from using the talents God gave us to make the world a better place. In my case, to share knowledge and information, to comment on things that are going on and correlate, because I'm a seeker of knowledge. Perhaps you are too. I want to know a lot of things about a lot of things. I'm like multi-interested, multi-passionate. And when I look back on my journey, I don't want to go too long here. Again, I could talk all day and I have. When I look back upon my journey, like me being right here, right now, at this point in time and place is perfect. There you go. I'll leave it at that. Let's continue.
And see, when we're moving attention from the
But I will say, if you want to go check out One Life, you can learn more at thisismyonelife.com.
thought activity to the body breathing, you're moving your attention away from the process that says you're a personality. You're moving your attention away from the process that's telling you a story about the world, telling you how the world is, telling you how you are and other people are. It's telling you that all the time. It's your conditioning using a voice in your head to run the operation. And if you think that's you, you are being subjected to a mechanical, automated, highly conditioned, fear-based, highly confused system that's running the show. And when you practice meditation, the possibility starts to come into existence for you to wake up and discover who you really are other than that. And when you discover that you really are the awareness, not the thought process and the personality, you can then start to use that as a way of living your life. Start to pay attention and see things.
That's what people describe. The way I describe it is the monkey mind, right? The monkey mind will mess you up, right? Monkey mind's, like OCD to the max, ADHD to the max, like squirrel, what's this? Bright, shiny object, right? Monkey mind cannot sit in a room by itself and just bliss out. Monkey mind cannot do that. It got to be going, be, and do all this shit. And it drags us along for the ride. But the meditation, remember, that's exactly what I experience when I'm meditating and when I'm on my game. It drops you down. It helps you ground into that point of awareness, and you detach, and you're like, oh, this is what I want to, this is what I want to carry throughout the day. It does. If I do it in the morning, it helps me be present and calm and aware and conscious throughout the day. And my days go far better.
As they really are, so that you can start to have a life that works, start to have a life that you can enjoy, start to have a life in which there's peace, functionality, and happiness. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It takes time, it takes a commitment, it takes a conviction, it takes practicing every single day to gradually come out of the condition that most of us find ourselves in. And so in order to do that, in order to establish a meditation practice, right, you're going to have to deal with your mind. You're going to have to deal with your mind. You're going to have to deal with the voice in your head, and you're going to have to turn the situation around. The voice, you're going to have to turn that situation around so that that voice starts working for you instead of having you work for it. You're going to have to turn the situation around so you stop listening to what the voice says, but instead paying attention to what the voice is saying and then looking to see, is that a match for what's actually going on? And if you start practicing that, you'll start seeing it's not a match for a lot of what's going on. And that explains why a lot of the behavior that comes from believing those thoughts doesn't work. So it's going to take time, it's going to take practice, it's going to take a teacher, it's going to take guidance, it's going to take a commitment. And most people will fail this. Most people will fail this because in the beginning, it's a new thing and people get excited about it, and then it's like everything else. As soon as that initial honeymoon is over, then it just falls into like something that I don't feel like doing anymore. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand that that's going to happen. And by the way, if you're...
This guy is nailing it. I mean, this video is phenomenal. I didn't know it was going to be this awesome from the title. I thought he was just going to talk about the experience, but like, do you see what he's doing? Like, he's giving us the key out of the prison that the mind creates. Super awesome.
New to meditation, right? And you came here and you sat for the period of time that we did, and you concluded, I don't want to do this. This wasn't comfortable. My thought process was racing the whole time. I was restless the whole time. Why would anybody practice this, right? Well, that's a typical experience for somebody that's new at meditation. But I can tell you that's not meditation. You're just trying to do it in the beginning, that's all. And that's why it's uncomfortable and restless. But you have to stick that out. You have to go through that initial phase, and you have to keep getting the support necessary, and you have to keep studying the teachings. It's even more important in the beginning to study the teachings, because that's where you need the most motivation to get through that initial period of trying to meditate and being uncomfortable. I can tell you that's not meditation. If you stay with it, you'll gradually start to have a direct appreciation of what you're practicing. And the experience of practicing meditation will start to become different. right? The experience of meditation, once you get further down the road and the body starts responding to relaxing and the mind starts to calm down, when you sit down to meditate, you'll find that you go into a very peaceful, relaxed, positive state in which you're resetting your mind. You're changing your brain when you practice meditation. If you want to read a book about that, the neuroscience of meditation, it's a book called Altered Traits by Dr. Richie Davidson. Talks about all the research that was done on monks, research using scans to scan.
Let me share my experience with what he's talking about there. Prior to learning TM, because he's talking about, the difficulty that it is, and if you're meditating and your mind's racing. Prior to learning TM, I had tried a number of different types of meditation. I did try breath meditation, being aware of my breath. I did try candle flame meditation. And I also tried Zazen style, which I know is breath style, Zazen style. I learned it from my Aikido teacher. We would do that. What else did I do? I think those were the main, maybe some mudra type, things. But until I learned TM, which is mantra-based meditation, and you think the mantra in your mind, right? It's a quiet meditation. You just think it over and over and over again. And that gives the mind, the monkey mind, something to latch onto and focus on, while the body goes into a deep state of relaxation. Like there's a detachment from the monkey mind and the body and like the parasympathetic nervous system. And I will say this, the moment that I did my first TM meditation, I still remember it like it was yesterday. It felt like the floor dropped out and I just sunk. Remember that movie? This is not a great reference, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's the best thing I can think about. Remember that movie Get Out, where she hypnotized him and he dropped into that deep state? That's what it felt like, but in a positive way, in a blissful way, a super safe way. That was a weird analogy, but that's what it felt like. I just dropped into this deep state of relaxation. And because that happened, and it was a visceral feeling, I felt it in every cell in my body, I knew I was onto something, and I knew this was the practice that I wanted to continue. And it was easy to continue it, and it still is, because it worked. You'll know if it works. You'll know if your meditation is working, right? If you drop in and you get super relaxed and you give yourself that gap, just like he's talking about. So my experience was kind of like when he was first talking about the monkey mind and the racing mind. I never experienced that until I practiced TM and learned TM. The very first time that I got my mantra and we did the session, I just dropped into this deepest state of relaxation I have ever known in my life. And it sold me. And that's why I still practice it. Again, I can always do better, but that's why I continue
to practice it. And their brain, and the research showed that their brains were very different from people who didn't meditate. The structure of the brain and the process of the brain. So if you're somebody that needs the science to be motivated, read that book. That'll motivate you. But you do need to come to an understanding about how all this works so that you can stick with it over time. And when you do that, there are people who have been coming to this class for years now, and they have reported to me that because they stuck with it and continued to practice and refine the practice and deepen their understanding of the practice, it has changed their life. It has changed their experience of who they are. It's changed their experience of the world. It's changed their experience of the relationships. So it's proven itself to work. But it won't work by itself. You've got to take it on and take responsibility for doing it every single day and developing the understandings necessary that are the foundation for the practice of meditation. About it is that anything that you give your attention to fully, you're totally involved with what you're doing. So there's no attention here. It's all out there, right? Then you're not there. All that's there is the piano playing, right? And when you're not there, that's when you're there. right? Because the you that's not there is the thought process, because you're busy paying attention to what you're doing completely, right? And when you're doing that, what's there is the awareness, and that's who you really are. And so you experience a relief and a relaxed state, okay? In meditation, we're doing a similar thing. We're moving attention from the thinking activity to paying attention to the breath. We're using the breath as the point of we're paying attention to. If we develop this sufficiently, right? Remember, I said this is a natural state here. This is not something that we're changing. This is the way we actually already are, right? So if we develop our ability to be in this natural state, right, then that experience that you have by playing the piano or somebody has by long distance running is available to you all the time under all circumstances. Because under all circumstances, you have the ability to pay attention, right, in such a way, all right, where you can see what's happening in the mental activity, see what's happening in the emotional state, in the physical body, right? And you can let that go and be present the way you are when you're playing the piano, right? This is the power that we all have as human beings that's untapped. It's untapped, right? So you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
you see what he's talking about when in his style of meditation, focusing on the breath style of meditation, in and out, that gives your monkey mind something to focus on and be distracted with.
So those things are wonderful, right? Those are playing a musical instrument, you know, playing a sport, you know, doing whatever it is where you can lose yourself in it is a wonderful relief, right? Meditation is something you can practice.
Lose yourself. Remember what he talked about at the beginning? You're not who you think you are, or you are who you think you are. Your thoughts just, you know, whatever you've picked up on your journey. And remember, as little kids, Bruce Lipton talks about this a lot too. Whatever goes in, 1 to 7, 1 to 6, your bullshit meter or your filter isn't up. You're a kid, you're a sponge soaking it all in. And also even before that in the womb, vibrations of fear or anxiety or whatever you're picking up from your mom. We pick up from the environment around us. And it gets impressed into the mind and gets built into our sense of self. And then we just repeat the patterns over and over again, you know. It's wild.
That makes that available all the time under all circumstances, even when you're upset. Even when the circumstances are difficult and trying, you will be able to go into this peaceful, relaxed, grounded state. That's not a state of mind, it's a state of being. A state of being is a natural state. A state of mind is a conditioned state. And as you get older, the dividends get higher as you get older, right? Because as you get older and you look in the mirror and you're disgusted, right? You can look in the mirror when you get older and realize what you're looking at is not you. That's just the body. That body is not you. So you can get along with it better as you get older. And as you get older, you can start to understand that if this truth that you've been discovering called awareness itself, if you succeed in making the transition to being that instead of what you thought you were, right? The ultimate payoff, as Jesus Christ said, I offer you life everlasting. The ultimate payoff is to discover that you don't die. Because if it's true that you are this consciousness, that's not physical. That's not physical. They talk about it in the ancient teachings as the unborn. The reality of what you are wasn't born and doesn't die. The body was born. The consciousness appeared temporarily in the physical form, right? But it wasn't born and it doesn't die. So this offers you that. You know, what more could you ask for than being peaceful, happy, satisfied, and to transcend your own death? That's what's possible through meditation. It sounds...
Mic drop. I mean, do we... This video is so freaking awesome. I had no idea. This guy is insane.
It's unbelievable. It's that radical and it's that unbelievable. Most people find that statement to be unbelievable. You know, the idea that that death isn't real, you know, and that you could study this and practice this, and when the time comes for you to die, you could relax and let go and have a conclusion of a well-lived life. What more do you want, right?
Son of a gun. You gotta be kidding me. Now let's get into these comments and see what people are saying. We're in the highest level of hell and the lowest level of heaven. We are here in the realm where heaven and hell meet. Okay, I buy it. I'm awake and still don't want to be here. It's like living in an insane asylum with no exit door. Can be sometimes. I feel that way too sometimes. The very first thing all of us did when we were born into this world was cry. Oh my gosh, I can relate to that. Hell is empty and all the devils are here. William Shakespeare, that's a good one. This is true because I used to wake up in dread and just wanted to go back to sleep. But I started eating healthy, fasting, and meditating, and it changed my whole outlook and way I lived, and I'm so much happier now. Dude, I can relate to that. That's the other thing about it is food. For me, starting with food and diet is the number one. Even before you learn to meditate, starting with food and diet to get the sugars and toxins and preservatives and seed oils and all the crap out of the body, so out of our system, so the body can actually, perceive truth and calm down. A lot of, it's going to be hard to meditate if you're hopped up on caffeine and sugar. Just saying. Even though I'm sat here watching this in relative comfort and safety with food, water, and sanitation, I still think there is both heaven and hell on this earth. Somebody somewhere is going through unbelievable suffering right now, and another is experiencing true ecstasy and awe. I would agree with that. Take no thought is mentioned numerous times in the Bible. Meditate, meditate, meditate. Breath work. Be a witness to these thoughts. Do not attach. Yes, takes practice, courage, heart, and true sanctuary or spirituality. It's very uncomfortable. Absolutely. Heart to brain connection. Just be flow. Beautiful message. It was a beautiful message. This place is a hellish prison. Little breadcrumbs of happiness may come, but then evil swoops in. But I think the work that he's talking about, I know it does. I know it helps me navigate and be more at peace with what's happening. This is the most condensed sacred knowledge I've ever heard. Straight to, I agree with that 100%. This video is over the top. I'm so glad we watched it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, by the way. When you are suffering, life doesn't feel like a brief visit. It feels like eternity, and I'm 50 years old, and what he is saying is way easier said than done, including meditation. That's why people turn to drugs and cope. Again, I will say, start with diet, put some exercise in. I would almost say meditation should be, this might be controversial. I would say meditation comes definitely after diet. And maybe even after some exercise, maybe exercise, but diet first, including a mental diet, right? Including stop with the news and the media. That stuff is super poisonous for our consciousness. And movies and music. Like right after COVID, I don't listen to the radio in my car. I'll pull up a video like this, or I'll listen to some, soul music from the 70s, or some high vibe music, or some, brain entrainment type music, but I don't listen to modern music. I don't need that in my brain. It's how evil is allowed to exist. Earth is a level of hell. Over the years, I often thought of this place as hell in my 50s and have some unhealthy coping mechanism. Over the years, meditation and breathwork have been my saving grace. Yep. If there was a button to just escape this realm and everybody and their mother had access to it, I'm sure 80% would push it as soon as you end your sentence about what the button. I'm not sure what that means. The truth is, I don't need 2,000 more years of debating the truth. I simply need the truth. Okay. We were dropped in a potential paradise, and through lack of introspection and meditation, we've created more suffering and death than Dante himself could have imagined. I agree with that. Makes sense that this is hell, given the fact that hell is the one place God is not, which is why we live in a terrible world where it feels like only bad guys make it to the top, and the people we would classify as good people, sometimes it feels like that. War is just ego versus ego. This is why peace is impossible in the world. It feels like that, although I think we're reaching a tipping point. I think humanity is waking up. I know I am. Personality isn't just what you think it is. There is a genetic basis. True, I buy it. Thank you for this insight about meditation. The part where you said in the beginning you're not meditating, but you're trying to meditate really makes a lot of sense. All right. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. I thought that was a fantastic video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Check out One Life at thisismyonelife.com. Also, if you want to subscribe to my weekly video newsletter, it comes out every Friday. I might change the day, but you can do that at gmarkphillips.com/subscribe. And I'm going to give you the heart and soul of One Life when you do that. It's called How to Find Your Mission in Life, because I think it's super important for people to be on their mission right now in life. Because as my friend Brandon Kroll said, I've interviewed him a couple times on my channel. He said, if you don't know your purpose, you will be a pawn in another man's game. You gotta know your purpose and your mission. This is what drew me in during COVID times to start speaking out about what was controversial, right? COVID, vaccinations, etc. I saw people pulled off their purpose. That's a big problem for me in the world, because when people aren't on their purpose and they're pawns in another man's game, i.e. the government and pharmaceutical companies, which are really just puppets for the evil people behind them, when the media and government pulls people from their purpose and captures their attention and makes them look over here at a bright, shiny object and makes them do things they wouldn't normally do, that's a huge problem for me on many levels, but primarily because it pulls people from their purpose. Doctors aren't healing, nurses aren't nursing, architects aren't building, designers aren't designing, chefs aren't creating, and humanity will crumble. Right? This is why you don't want to watch the news and the media and government. They're distracting you from your purpose, and they're evil. They will pull you from your purpose. And so I saw millions of people being distracted and used and abused, so to speak. And I was like, son of a bitch. I guess I got to start speaking out about this at the risk of, offending and alienating people. So I did. And I don't regret it. And it changed the trajectory of my life. But there you go. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you. All the best, health, wealth, and success. We'll talk to you in the next one. Bye-bye.